Hello, everybody. I hope this finds you well. I'm Danny Thorniley, president of the Russia CIS Business Group, and I've got great pleasure today to be talking with a good friend of the family, Sergey Riabokobylko, who is the executive partner, general director for Russia of Cushman Wakefield. Sergey, we've had lots of live contacts and digital contacts. Lovely to be here today with you. I want to talk about all the business aspects that are going on, but first of all, I'd like to kick off with a comment about yourself. What's been your background, and how did you get where you are today?
Danny, first of all, thank you very much for this kind invitation, and it's good to try a new format of engaging with you and our members. Speaking about the background, I guess I'm a product of the Soviet system and the liberal arts education part of the Soviet system, because I went through the education in languages, literature, theater, both in Russia, Soviet Union, and in the US. I was very fortunate to have had basically just in the early 90s access to some of these amazing educational opportunities, many of which still exist here in Moscow and in Russia. And my career really started by accident. Real estate didn't exist as a field, and professional services didn't exist as a field when I was graduating, when I was finishing my university in 1994. So while I was still in university, I joined a startup, as it's now very popular as a theme. Back then, it was just normal. Companies got organized, and one of them was a startup set up by a few Americans with some experience in real estate advisory and brokerage, which I joined. And then a year later, I started my own firm with one of the American partners. We called it Styles and Riabokobylko. And it's been exactly 25 years now since this venture has first had its humble beginnings in the apartment on Malay Kazihinsky and Patriarchia. And it was one telephone, one fax line, 2 computers, and a Russian Hunter Spaniel. So that was our setup. But we were extremely fortunate, because we had amazing clients. Our first client was Anna Belova, who was at the time head of Booz Allen Hamilton. We worked with the founders of McDonald's, with the partners who set up McKinsey, Mickey Eberhard, and Tav, and Charlie Eliason at Caterpillar. And many of these clients have become mentors at one time or another, and we've also absorbed their savoir-faire into our DNA. So our aim back then, as it is today, was to build the best professional services firm with a focus in real estate.
Wow.
And then I guess we partnered with Cushman Wakefield in 1998, first as an associate office for that storied real estate services firm. And then we agreed to sell our business to them in 2006. So since 1995, we essentially have continued on the journey of discovery, creating the market segments as we grew alongside our clients. So we were behind the first modern shopping centers in Russia, the IKEA mega malls, created the first and I think still the best neighborhood shopping center, which is Gallery Airport, right on Leningradsky. We believed in and worked on, supported the development of Crocus City Mall and Vegas's, Krolatsky Business Park, White Square Office Complex, many of the other projects which changed the face of the city. So it's extremely fortunate to have actually had this fantastic ride, which we still think it's in the first quarter, the first innings of the game. So we're today 240 people in our team, and we're I think our aim, and those that know our firm, Avia members, know that we touch every single aspect, every single segment of the real estate industry. We actually believe that in Russia you cannot be singularly focused on just one area, like offices or retail. You have to be able to kind of adapt and grow and help our clients across the entire spectrum, because most of our clients touch more than one specific area.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again. I knew some elements of the story, but that was a good introduction for me to other parts as well. You mentioned theatre as well in your studies. Don't worry, on another occasion with a bottle of wine, I'd like to hear more about that. It sounds very interesting indeed, but that's not the forum for today. On a business side, you touched something very interesting, which we can discuss maybe later in the questions, diversification. And, you know, it was a winning theme, and absolutely couldn't agree more. But if I may, tragically, sadly, 2020 was the year of COVID, and it's not finished yet. But for 2020, globally, first of all, and you know, your business, your industry, and also your own firm and organization, for many companies, by the end of the year, it was getting better than could have been expected. But obviously, yours is a sector that's been hit in different ways globally, and you know, your response to your client demands and what you've seen. What have been the main dynamics on a global basis?
For us, the 2020 was really finding answers with our clients to three main questions: how deep will be the trough, this effect of the pandemic, how long will it last, and what would be the shape of the coming back, both for ourselves, and we had to answer those three questions, and for a lot of our clients. And we've actually answered the first two. I think the third, the shape of the recoveries, is still uncertain. It's actually happening faster in most of our client organizations, including our own, than we've expected. In fact, our results for the first four months of this year are better than our plan, which was put together at the end of last year, better than 2020. And what's very interesting for us, we're a quarter, 25% ahead of 2019 numbers. And actually, that dynamic is something that I think a lot of companies experience, because there's a delay, a pent-up kind of demand for decisions for action across capital expenditures, across new projects that pandemic basically pushed into 2021 for a lot of companies. So this year, it's been absolutely remarkable how much activity has really come across our radar, across every sector, including hospitality. We've been very lucky to have been investing in the sector for many years, since early 2000s. We've had a team that was focused on hospitality sector, and today we have the largest team in the market among all professional services firms. We work with many in collaboration, and with a lot of our clients in collaboration, because the sector actually touches the entire geography of Russia and also former CIS. And there is a tremendous amount of interest in domestic tourism, and consequently in development of tourist hotel infrastructure, basically all the way through to the Kuril Islands in the east, as well as the Arctic Circle, which is a popular destination for those tired of bumping elbows at Sochi.
Absolutely, hospitality sector. I've been surprised and worked with several of the organizations, and we probably share that. I've been refreshed and revived by the stories I hear. You would have thought it was cataclysmic what happened, and I'm sure a year ago it was, but there's certainly been recovery. Thanks for the comments on the recovery side as well. I take the point, Sergey, we're not sure where we go yet, but the initial signs are good. Moving to Russia, what I saw, and you may echo it, September, October, companies were still unsure how 2020 would turn out completely. But by November, December, we were getting a lot of stories, not all, but a lot of stories from companies that we survived it well. And then, as you say, you know, globally, and quarter 1 has been a goodish one from the anecdotes and surveys that I'm seeing. So my question is really, how comparable and what are the drivers and themes that are global, which are replicated in Russia? But then again, what's different? Is there anything different about Russia in your industry? And my guess, intimation would be that there must be, because it's Russia. But how's that going?
Yes, first maybe I will mention that this the hospitality element that we've just discussed, it is actually very interesting to observe because the elements of the service paradigm of the hospitality sector are actually getting dispersed. They're moving into the other sectors that previously had a very transactional approach to their client experience, be it office or logistics or even the further along, alternative sectors like medical, etc. So hospitality actually creates this ability to have positive, have very unique client experiences, and that's something that I think we and all the other sectors learn from hospitality, and actually people with experience in hospitality are now with a premium in the market, in the talent market, because most companies realize that even for their own teams, for their own kind of environment, the setup of their own, let's say, headquarters organizations, knowledge of the way the best hotels curate their environments is actually very important. We're gonna, I'm sure, talk more about this later, but I just wanted to mention that this kind of understanding of how hospitality touches all the other sectors of property is today perhaps quite unique. Thinking of what happened in the last 6 months, we're very fortunate to be part of a large global firm, and a firm with a very large footprint in Asia. I've mentioned in one of our meetings that we have 5,000 colleagues working just in China alone. It's an enormous business, and a business that we're getting probably more and more connected with as time goes on, and as our clients shift focus from, let's say, Europe or US to what's happening in Asia, and using China or other markets as leading indicators. So clearly, we saw a shift to e-com, to logistics, to data centers, to the focus from the investor community, first of all, for the assets in that space in China and Asia. Way before this has become kind of an accepted truth in Europe and certainly in Russia. We've actually seen Asian investors come and look at the data center space in Russia because they're guided by a lot of the same dynamics that they see in their own markets, and they basically believe that Russia will be also catching up as far as the availability and also access to capital that is still today quite constrained for these very, very core attractive sectors. Everything else, with varying degrees of stress, has been able to come out of the pandemic and go through a repurposing or reorganization in order to be to adapt themselves. Sectors like retail, which is still stressed across most geographies, but not uniformly, and also Russia in that respect has is in a very unique position because retail and modern retail is a fairly unique new phenomenon in Russia. Most of the modern shopping centers have been built in the last 10, 12 years. And they, in most cities in Russia, in most regions, they're the areas for community engagement, community participation, for people to meet other people in a protected, safe, and dry environment, temperature controlled environment, which is important for Russia and some of the other climates. some of the other geographies, but more so in Russia, of course. So we think that the retail in Russia, the shopping center sector, is also going to be recovering, maybe at a different pace, not uniformly, but will be recovering. And we see a lot of interest from primarily domestic investors in the stress that just historically has built up in this area. Offices, we I think have been very fortunate to come into this pandemic with a low vacancy, fairly low new supply, where we don't have a supply side problem in office space. We're fairly well balanced, and as a result, we've seen basically the rents holding up, continued new development taking place, and companies actually having a hard time finding locations that suit them, because today's requirements are substantially different than what developers were really building for 4 or 5, even 10 years ago, even more 10 years ago. And logistics is the darling of the investor community today. Of course, everyone is looking at the super low vacancy rates, increasing rents as an indicator that this sector perhaps has quite a nice runway ahead of them. And actually, people with concentration in logistics, be it occupiers or investors, see that are looking at alternative ways of engaging a wider investment community in this sector through use of REITs or Russian ZPIFs, basically giving an opportunity for a wider community to participate in this market.
Great, thanks. I was chatting with somebody before we got together, Sergey, and I was saying I'm going to be talking with you shortly. And the executive in question, he's a friend of yours as well. He said, please ask Sergey the following. Rentals on offices, his opinion is, B plus and above that, the rental costs of offices seem to be holding up quite well in Moscow, is his perception. C and below is, a little bit more under pressure. You sort of intimated that could be the case, but just could you confirm that? And maybe for the non-specialists, what are the drivers behind that quality office space holding up?
I think this is a much bigger question today, because the rents are quite static, because they represent decisions made 3-5 years ago in many cases. But I think what's interesting to observe today and to see kind of how the companies are responding with the new environment of basically forced remote work through a pandemic, through the lockdowns, and now more of a let's say decisions that were taken in order to adapt the office environment to what's actually the most efficient for the staff, for the employees, for the companies to deliver the results in the industries and sectors. So I think what the rents, we should not look at them in isolation. They have stayed fairly stable throughout last year. We've seen basically some local increases in rents driven by the availability or lack of availability for quality space, where when you have 2 or 3 bidders for the same location, you shouldn't expect many discounts to be still on the table at the end of the negotiation process. We had one of our major IT clients who was getting the approvals for the space, which they've selected with us. Everything was going smoothly, except the approvals in China were taking a few weeks. And by the time they got their approvals, a local IT company made a snap decision in 2 days to lease that space, and the space was gone. So this was, they were amazed. They were like, what's going on? What's happening? But this was I think a unique situation because the property was very well located, and there was a lot of demand for that type of space. But you have to be aware that there are dynamics. There obviously not every company is growing, but there are sectors like e-com, tech, or tech parts of large organizations or large ecosystems like Tinkoff and Sber. They're growing and they're actually continuing to hire, and they need quality space, and they're also using offices to compete for talent. Because how much more do you can you actually overbid the cost of your employees? It's much more safe and secure for and long term sustainable for companies to offer an environment that is actually more attractive than competitors, and use that as an argument to get someone to come and join. Of course, culture and everything else plays a big part, but office actually now is in many cases seen as a driver for kind of anchoring talent that needs to be brought on board and then secured. That's a long answer to a short question.
And it answers the question for sure. Thanks a lot. Coming just spontaneously, some of the words you're using, Sergey, as well. You mentioned just in passing, the regions, and we know in business that Moscow is Moscow, but Moscow is not Russia. Have there been any changes in the last 12 months because of the crisis, changed environment? Has there been any big change in the dynamic relationship between what goes on in Moscow and what's happening in the regions?
Yeah, I think the new way of working, the way of hybrid engagement that is now possible, that is now accepted, that is now a rule, has opened up opportunities for onboarding talent or engaging talent that is actually geographically distant from your main location. This is easier to accomplish when you actually have people that already work within your organization, or a team that works in your organization that actually moves off and works where maybe their family is from. Then getting someone to join and be integrated and effective in a fully remote mode. However, that is also possible, and we've seen very good examples where organizations have actually built cases when some of the teams were hired fully remotely and working from other cities. So I think that this actually creates more opportunities for talent that for some reason is maybe not as mobile to work in the locations that are more attractive, where they can be more productive, and for companies to engage this pool that previously was not available to them. So I think regions are overall going to win as a result of the pandemic, and there is now competition among cities. There's basically a federal program for improving the quality of life in the cities, and that's not just in Millioniki, the million plus cities, but it's basically cities across the board. And Web, Strelka, and there's lots of organizations that are committed to actually driving this kind of change of the look and feel of the cities and the regions, and the services that are available to the workforce that actually chooses to operate from other than the established locations like Yekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, or Moscow. So we see that the regions are getting, in addition to the domestic tourism, it's obviously a very significant outcome and benefit from the pandemic. We see this hybrid work as enabling cities to compete for, frankly, the talent that they previously had no chances of holding or keeping in their towns after university.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Sergey. No, good points. And the staycation, the domestic tourism, it's a big driver globally and in Russia. And many of our group members have been saying, on the consumer product side, Sochi is booming for them. Let's put more facilities in Sochi and the Sochi rayon and district and everything.
Yeah.
We both had long careers at talking about Russia and being positive and upbeat, I think, in a sensible and balanced way without ignoring the negatives. And at one stage you mentioned Western investors. My question would be, what's Western investment like in your sector? And you've touched upon it already, but then overall for your clients, what are they doing? We both know that, the official numbers on foreign direct investment last year and currently are very low. We have the sanctions environment and the negative geopolitical situation, of course. How is that, impacting on your sector industry? And secondly, how is it impacting on the general business mood of the executives, you're spending time with?
I think that's a great question. We see that on the investor side, yes, there's interest from overseas investors still, and I think there's going to be always, as long as there is this significant differential in the yields. Russian market has a significant risk premium, which in many cases is not justified, in our opinion, and that will always create this kind of desire of people to hunt for yield in this geography. Overall, we see the market, as in most locations today, actually is dominated by domestic capital. Everywhere, domestic capital is the main driver. Even between, France and Germany, you have a significant reduction in cross-border investment deals. This is an opportunity, actually, when in most liquid open markets, domestic capital has a breathing space. They can actually bid for assets that previously, Korean investor or a Singaporean investor would outbid them on. But today it's an opportunity to assemble a nice portfolio. I think in Russia, it's also an opportunity as the markets have rebalanced. It's a fully local currency investment environment, taking out some elements of risk, adding others, but making it certainly much more manageable and transparent. I think domestic investors with interest in the sector are definitely active and continuing to look at both portfolio buys as well as the individual acquisitions. But I mean, overall, the environment in Russia, and I think most of our group members share this. The reason they love working here, most of us, I think, is that we have fewer externally imposed rules in Russia. So it's much freer as an environment in terms of competition and ability to create something new. And also a strong entrepreneurial culture that exists across the board. That is, I think, a strong driver that helps a lot of the local organizations in fairly stable sectors reinvent themselves and create local champions. I mean, look at Tinkoff, look at Alpha, look at organizations that are light years ahead of their Western European or American competitors in terms of digitalization, ability to drive excellent client experience. So we think that is a core reason why investors are actually, once the geopolitics takes a breather, or at least doesn't create any bad news for a while, allows us an opportunity to see some deals in the space with new capital.
Great. But I love the phrase giving a breathing space to domestic capital. It's a very, very nice phrase indeed. And I hear what you say. You've actually answered also, Sergey, my follow-up question, which was more, going to be, what are the plus sides of the business environment generally? And you've addressed that. And Thank you very much. Um, as you say, also, I share with you, if we can get a breather from on the geopolitical side, like you said, the risk yield is high for Russia and maybe unrealistically so, in our opinion. I share that on the ruble as well. I think there's been too much risk priced into the ruble, but the financial markets are not listening at the moment, certainly not entirely. But I'd like to move to the area of well, before I was going to move to the back to the office topic, work from home, and ask you more about the future of offices, which is very much your area. But I'd also like your general opinion on the residential side of real estate, because globally, but certainly in Russia, thanks to subsidized mortgages, I had the figures, mortgages are up 19% last year, depending also whether you're looking at the cash or the number of contracts, it goes up to 30, 40%. That will stay for a little while longer. The residential property market is booming. How long, in the UK or the US, is it a bubble? Is it all going to collapse and be the end of the world? I think not for Russia. But what's the dynamic there for business consumption? And does that have, and I don't know the answer, does that have any impact on the commercial side of business, or do they just go along merrily, separately?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think for a long time, residential was sort of seen as a side kind of a story, as a separate pillar of the sectoral activity, and this was actually before the new regulation that has actually brought in residential into the proper regulated world, where the banks actually started to play their role of a balancer, and the ultimate buyers of residential stopped looking at themselves as investors. They started to look at themselves as occupiers of the units. So we think that, and I've been very fortunate also for, I guess, more than the last 13 years. I've been involved in various residential development structures, primarily on the boards as non-executive director, but helping on the either creating, building up the development businesses, or in some cases, like now I'm on the board of Inteco, which is probably the best story of a problem organization being actually converted and transformed into one of the sectoral leaders just in the space of 3 years, even less. So we see that it is an absolutely unique sector because the government and the state doesn't play a role in it directly. It's actually free of state interference or state participation, and actually makes residential development in general a very interesting kind of an area, really a free market kind of an area to observe. There are a lot of players, not a lot of experience, and a very quickly changing quality benchmark. So basically, what was acceptable 2 years ago, today is considered to be below par. And that is, in addition to availability of mortgage finance, as you said, basically much broader and much more transparent way to manage costs and risk on behalf, for the buyers of future space. This has really created a dynamic, very quickly evolving marketplace where competition is fierce, but the winners are the buyers of residential units, because what you buy today for your several 100,000 rubles per square meter is nowhere in comparison to what you received 5 years ago for a similar amount of cash. So it clearly is the area to watch, and a lot of the developers in residential also participate in the commercial market. and many of them are part of large holding companies where there's also other commercial activities and investments that are taking place. So I think there is synthesis of best practice that goes from one area to the other. And that is extremely interesting to watch and absolutely unparalleled to participate in.
Super. Well, that's more than the answer I needed, Sergey. Thanks a lot. And it was a generally open question. I like to think I know quite a few things, but I didn't know the answer to that, so thanks. I'd like to take us now, just a little bit of repetition, but you're the man for this. You've touched it on already. So many of the lay people like myself who have a good general knowledge of the developments in offices and how they're being used. As I say, Central Europe and Western Europe is very different from Russia with the lockdowns we've had in the service sector. I'm speaking with people every day, and in Central Europe, it's and Austria and Western Europe, 95% of the general managers I'm speaking with are working from home. So that is still the model today. Of course, we trust it will open up over the summer months. In Russia, when I'm speaking to people, I would say it's more like of the international management. It's still 50, 60, 70% are at their home offices. Most people are saying that, we've got our Western companies are saying our office is 15 to 25% occupancy today. We will review it after the May holidays. A few companies are saying we'll review it in September. And a smaller minority are saying we're not doing anything until December because we've been mandated by New York or somewhere to do that. There's also another cliche, and I'd like your response on it, that the Westerners are taking a more conservative at-home view, and the Russian domestic companies are more, let's go back to normal, we didn't have the lockdowns. So I'm hearing that Russian companies are 50, 60, 70, 80% occupied and so on. My final part of this introduction to the long question is, do you go along with those comments? And the final generalization, which you've heard so much, I'm sure, is that in the future, in a year's time, we as a company will be something like 20, 25% less office usage, because we'll have people rotating, coming in and out, 3 days in, 2 days out, whatever. So those are all the cliches about offices, Sergey. You're more hands-on. Are the cliches true, and what's happening in Russia?
I think this is a great topic because first of all, there's no one right answer.
Yes.
This is a constantly evolving picture, and obviously it's very interesting to see the relevance to a specific sector of the economy, to a specific let's say history of the company. Where did they come from when the pandemic hit, and also what are the ways in which they're trying to change now, and how is the office going to be either an element helping them to do this or an obstacle preventing them from doing it as quickly as they would like. So we see generally today that the office has become, in the minds of most of our clients, let's say the C-suite, as the place where the collective work takes place. This is where we call it now, in our parlance, in Russian, офис — это место коллективного труда. So you have to consider that the office, the reason to go to the office, is to work collectively on certain things. Not, you don't go to the office anymore to write emails or to make phone calls. Now that you can work from anywhere. What's also is interesting is that you were talking about the proportions of different companies. We've just completed a survey with about 200 corporate clients and more than several thousand respondents within those organizations. About 50% of the staff are still working remote today. right before May holidays. We see that highest percentage of remote is actually in IT and tech, and lowest percentage, and that's about 76%, lowest percentage is in the old economy, manufacturing, services, etc. Only about 30% remote. There is a high degree of uncertainty as to what our clients think is going to happen to this current state of remote work. Are they going to go more towards 3 to 4 days in the office, or stay around 2-3 days for each person, but not necessarily all at the same time? This, I think, will depend on the shape of the waves of the pandemic, the virulence of the new variants, continuation of stress on the public health systems, etc. I mean, there's going to be a lot of other unknowns that will have to be on the table before companies will be able to definitively decide. Therefore, the flexibility and the ability to let's be nimble with their space is an absolute priority for everyone. So most of our projects, now I should actually say 100% of every office-related project that we do today starts with a workplace strategy component, because we sit down and talk. We have a workplace team that actually is the #1 team in the market, probably the deepest well of knowledge and information, and also understanding of what other countries are doing, companies in their sector in different countries, how they're adapting to this new environment. So the workplace planning piece is absolutely critical, and then the ability to kind of look at the entire workplace ecosystem. We should never really talk anymore about office because the work takes place anywhere, and we call it the workplace ecosystem because it includes your home. It includes the third places like the Starbucks and the restaurants and the other places where you also do work before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting that happens in a restaurant. Other places that allow you to sit down and work maybe close to your client's office, like a co-working or a flex office. And of course, your typical, historical location of your headquarters or a back office that maybe is in a different city. Yeah. So all of that really needs to be balanced and adjusted to be able to deliver the solutions that your workforce desires. And in many cases, give them an extra reason to come to work. Give them an extra impulse to be social and to deal with the complications of travel, masks, potential risks, etc., to be able to actually come to a place that is safe, secure, well engineered to deliver this extra level of comfort, and of course is designed in order to allow the maximum efficient collaborative work. So I think all of this really means that majority of the space that we've occupied up until the end of last year doesn't really fit and needs to be changed. Even, either changed while we still occupy it, or changed because, we moved somewhere else. In fact, interestingly, we asked our respondents, what do they plan, because, about 70% of our clients have not reduced office space last year.
Interesting. Okay.
So we asked them about the future. How do they see the future today? So 49%, half, basically say they do not plan to reduce the office space in the future. 12% say they want to increase. 14% they say they want to decrease. 26% are undecided or thereabouts. It's actually interesting because when you look at the same surveys done in Germany, they do this every 3 months. For example, our team, over 80% have been saying that they do not plan to reduce the office footprint. They plan to change the way their office footprint works. And in many cases, the changes in the office footprint would allow them to absorb, to accommodate this different schedules, maybe new teams working on different schedules, and the necessary collaboration that still takes place. Going back to your, let's say, the common observation among most in Moscow is that the multinationals are much more concerned about the health and well-being, and therefore they tend to be, let's say, on the one end of the curve with respect to remote work, and the Russian companies maybe less so on the other end of the spectrum. But look globally, some of the organizations are actually raising the alarm bells, like very public comments made by David Solomon of Goldman Sachs. Others, heads of major organizations, JP Morgan Chase, they're talking about the risk that prolonged separation, forced separation of colleagues can wreak on the culture of the company, ability to onboard, develop talent in the organization. Actually, an ability to synthesize knowledge that the clients depend on. They don't really care about how excellent you are as a knowledge worker. They care about the ability of you to be the channel to them of the knowledge of the organization. All of those things break down if you don't, if you continue just being virtually present. And they are actually leading the way on enforcing maybe much more rigorous presence in offices. 3 days a week, must maybe go into 4 days a week. I have friends working in New York who are saying that basically everybody is expected to be every day at work, maybe a little bit more flexibility around the times when you come in, so you avoid the peak hours, but you're expected to show up. So we're still experimenting, and I also use this opportunity to maybe make an open offer to our group members to come and visit our own flexible office, because we've just moved to 2 months ago to a new flex environment, because we're also trying to kind of see in how our solutions fit our own changing way in which we work. And it's a lab. We've already changed a few things since we moved in, and we're continuing to do that. So we're absolutely open to whoever is interested. We regularly organize visits for our clients. So we'd be happy to do this. We're on Tverskoy Boulevard next to Pushkin and Turandot. So very easy. So please stop by and see for yourselves how that may be a good solution for you.
Seriously, Sergey, we will put that out to some selected members of the group who might want to take it up. And I certainly, as I get back to Moscow, I'll be one of the first visitors, and I look forward to that. And you can take me to Turandot or Pushkin, and yeah, super. You're absolutely right that you were talking about the 2-3 days, and of course it's going to be very critical. Is it 2-3 days in or 2-3 days out? 1 day is 20% of a 5-day week, so I think that's going to be a very key definer. I think your comment on New York was interesting. I wasn't so aware of that. The flip side, of course, is Vienna, where I am, and still the mental lockdown that we have with the service sector being locked down. And I regret to say I will join you with the workplace ecosystem in my vocabulary rather than the glib the office. It's also a great opportunity, before I ask my last question on HR, the serendipity of the office and all the things you said, onboarding, etc. But I picked up last year the information that 25% of people find their husband or wife in the office. So it's a centre of romance as well, which is much needed. Although I imagine everybody's gone digital for their romance and other activities, but we will leave that. My final question, Sergey, allows us, I think, to talk about back to the positives of Russia, human resource and talent. You made a fascinating comment on the demand for talent from the hospitality sector. I hadn't clicked it. Once you said it, I went, aha, yes, of course, but I hadn't clicked into that. Overall, the last 15 months, your teams, your staff, your human resources in Russia, how have they shaped up? How are they managing? And what's been your overall experience of how they've coped with this new environment? I'm not leading the answer, but I've got my fingers crossed that it might be positive experience, and that would lead us into Russian HR generally is a good selling point for the country.
Yeah, I think, Danny, you've heard me on many occasions really talk about the fact that we've been extremely fortunate to ourselves, and maybe I'm sure this goes across many sectors. We've attracted and developed some of the best talent in our industry, and not just in this country. For example, our CFO at a certain point became the EMEA CFO for Cushman Wakefield. Many of our directors and partners are running our client and competitor teams. And 5 of our current directors combine their responsibilities with regional roles, which they oversee from Moscow. And this is actually at the time of deglobalization, Russia having a bad rep. And it's actually, I think, one of my biggest accomplishments as a CEO to have 5 Russian colleagues on regional roles in global roster. Actually, this is great. I think we actually need to be promoting our talent in a way that it deserves. So I think focus on client experience, the internal and external client experience of the firm is the way in which we try to have our space and what we do organized to basically get the people a little bit more connected and comfortable doing business and working with our organization internally and externally. I think also real estate is generally a transactional industry, so people come, they do the deal, and move on, right? So the rules for this client experience, the hospitality industry rules, they really are different or non-existent. So that's why we're putting this hospitality approach into the center of our firm. And I don't know, I think generally both people and the design of the organization must evolve for the performance of the organization to improve. And we are, that's why I already mentioned about experimentation. We are kind of forcing ourselves to experiment, but we're also open to our talent, our new teams that join us to be able to experiment within their area of expertise, or creating the new zones or new areas of product or services, because that's really, I think, the best chance that we have of using this talent that is extremely versatile and global, by being kind of grown up here in Russia, but very connected to the best practices and leading many practices in these respects. So we're just I think very, very focused on constant experimentation, but both with the design of how we work and the people that we work with.
Thank you, Sergey. Well, that was a great note to finish on. I'm looking at our time, and we went on a little bit, which is what I expected and wanted. It was a real delight, Sergey. I'm still talking to our audience now. This will be distributed to all members of the group. Your team and my team will make it available on social media access and so on. And it's been a real joy and pleasure. And as you say, it's nice, Sergey, to be engaging in this way. We've done it in many different ways, including the webinars now, the public ones, but this one-to-one activity. Because, by the way, I've had the pleasure of listening to you at our webinars, but we confine you and restrict you to about 12 minutes on those panel discussions. And I'm delighted here you've had the time to expand a bit and elaborate some of the ideas and keep us up to date on that. So it's been a real joy. Thank you very much. Look forward to the next time, and look forward to being in your office as your guest. All the best.
Thanks, Danny. Have a great day.
Thank you, and всего доброго.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.